The 1200 building they heard shots.
February 14th, Parkland, Florida.
Shot, Mom, God. Police officers and fire rescue on the way out there, okay?
17 people murdered at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High.
I truly cannot imagine the grief of losing a child.
State leaders react fast.
It can never happen again.
I'm announcing a major action plan.
They scramble, pass a school safety bill.
A strong bipartisan commitment to ensure that this does not happen again.
New money for security guards, new money for building security, new mental health guidelines.
We are going to figure out how to make our schools safer.
Fast action to prevent another school massacre.
The government can and must move fast.
But every 2 months, a new Parkland-sized catastrophe happens in Florida, and nobody reports on those deaths. 93 Florida children died from suicide last year. Many, if not all of those deaths, preventable. But Florida schools are failing on the mental health front, and it's costing our children their lives. Victor Kimball was almost the 94th Florida child to commit suicide last year.
For me, it started out of self-hatred.
A transgender teen, Victor's been dealing for 7 years with depression and the challenges that come with it. Family fights, falling outs with friends, plunging grades.
I just ended up pretty alone and not able to process a lot of what was happening to me.
When he needed a hand from a counselor in middle school, there wasn't one reaching out. Nobody noticed the red flags. Victor continued to slide. He turned to violence, wanted to hurt somebody. That somebody was Victor.
You cut yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much from the end of 6th grade till the beginning of 9th, I had a self-harm issue.
He needed help in those important teen development years. But instead of finding mental health professionals, Victor found another way to extinguish the anguish. A series of suicide attempts.
In that moment, at least, you don't care what happens. You have too much going on and you can't deal with it. You don't have any way to.
It shouldn't be this hard to get help, but in Florida, we found it all too often is. The American School Counselor Association recommends no more than 250 students to every mental health professional. But nearly 85% of schools across the country miss that mark. In Florida, it was nearly every school we reviewed.
We know that we're not quite where we need to be yet, but we do know that that's a priority over the next several years.
Nicole Cox is with the Manatee County School District, which finally got its student-to-counselor ratio below 400 to 1 this year, still among the worst in the area. But all of these districts heap non-counseling duties onto counselors' plates, draining their resources even more and making it harder to spot red flags and intervene when necessary.
That early intervention when a student is going through a crisis like that can prevent years and years of difficulty, both for that student as well as eventually even for the taxpayers.
Florida is not one of the 31 states that require a mental health professional in every high school, and there are no limits how thin those professionals can be stretched. When it comes to protecting your kids from these risks, Florida flunks. After Parkland, the state moved fast, with a renewed focus on preventing another tragedy. It passed a $400 million school safety bill in just 3 weeks. Legislative light speed.
In counseling and services in schools.
Leaders mandated a security guard in every school, but they didn't make the same mandate for mental health counselors. Someone, statistically speaking, your son or daughter is much more likely to need than a security guard.
Students are facing trauma that we don't see, we don't know about, and so, some of that is very silent.
Hillsborough Superintendent Jeff Aiken says his hands are tied by a legislature that came up with $261 million for school security, but only $75 million for school mental health. Our state leaders put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
What does that say about priorities?
We probably wouldn't have to invest so much money on the safety side if we took care of the root cause, and I think we know that ultimately we'll have a safer campus for everyone.
It's an investment in safety and in society Florida has failed to capitalize on. State Rep Kathleen Peters.
Our state needs to do better. We need to do better. And as a citizen, all of us need to demand that we do better when it comes to mental health.
Tallahassee made a promise to fix the broken system and save taxpayers money in the process. But state leaders got distracted along the way by guns.
what we're doing is we're putting mental health counselors in all of our schools.
The promise was access to a mental health counselor for every student. But unlike 31 other states, Florida still didn't require a professional in every school. It didn't fund them either. So many schools now share, meaning not enough help for all the kids in need.
It's not easy, it's hard. And there aren't enough champions.
Kathleen Peters is leaving Tallahassee after 6 years as the leading legislative champion on mental health. But even as a conservative Republican, even as the aunt of a 21-year-old who recently took his own life, she struggled to get state leaders to understand how much this silent threat costs us all, in lives, in learning, and in tax dollars.
The number one reason healthcare costs are skyrocketing is mental health. And it's because people are in the revolving door. Whatever you spend on it, there's a huge return on investment.
She says the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act was a good first step, but the legislature and next governor have so much more work to do on mental health.
It's the moral thing to do. It is the compassionate thing to do. But it certainly is the fiscally responsible thing to do because it is draining every single system of government at every single level.
Some districts tell us they're trying to hire more psychologists and social workers, but they aren't funded well enough to recruit them away from private practice. Peters says if the state won't address the matter, she will, one county at a time. She just won a seat on the Pinellas County Commission and is already making plans to overhaul mental health protocol.
It means everything to me. It's my number one goal. It's what I want to work on the rest of my life.
When Victor Kimball hears of a troubled teen shooting up a school, he relates.
We both ended up there the same way. Same unhelpful society we grew up in. Lack of adults to take care of us, lack of guidance, lack of resources, didn't learn how to deal with things.
Victor had the same red flags as Parkland shooter Nicholas Cruz. Struggles in school, depression, anger, and violence.
I had to take that anger out somewhere and I couldn't stand to hurt anyone else or anything else, so I hurt myself.
After 3 years of slicing gashes in his legs, then 3 suicide attempts during high school, Victor finally turned a corner last year when a hand reached out, a psychologist at Blake High School.
I can't imagine what would have happened if they hadn't have helped me. I can't imagine where I would be at.
His battle with depression continues, but Victor's on the way up with the help he gets from professionals. He graduated high school this year, he's got a full-time job, and he hasn't cut himself in 5 years.
5 years, holy that's a long time. I didn't think about that.
How does that make you feel?
Really incredible. I don't even think 12-year-old me can picture 5 years after all that. Wow.
Carolina, you know, it's not just the kids who may take their lives or the lives of someone else. There are so many kids like Victor out there who need help just to get through something. Anxiety, depression, eating disorders, or even divorce from their parents.
And these are all things that can really stunt a child's learning.
We're talking about so many kids, you know, and if you catch it early, preventative is always better than addressing it later. You know, getting help from a counselor in elementary or middle school may prevent depression in high school, and stopping depression in high school can prevent so many issues down the road.